The smoke of war still hung heavy in the ruined colony. Buildings lay broken, their metal walls twisted like paper, and the smell of burning fuel mixed with blood in the air. The sky was blackened by drifting ash, and every now and then, the thunder of distant explosions reminded the survivors that the battle was not yet over. Lieutenant Marcus Hale staggered through the rubble, his rifle almost slipping from his grip. His uniform was torn, his helmet cracked, and a deep wound ran along his side where an alien blade had cut him open. Each step sent fire through his body, but he forced himself to keep moving. His orders had been clear: hold the colony until reinforcements arrived. But reinforcements never came. Now the colony was silent. His unit was gone. He was alone. Marcus pressed a hand to his wound, feeling the warm blood soak through his fingers. The pain was sharp, but he kept his jaw tight. He would not fall, not yet. If the aliens wanted him dead, they would have to finish the job themselves. The Kithari soldiers were hunting. He could hear their metallic footsteps in the distance. Their armor clinked softly with every movement, smooth and deliberate like predators walking through tall grass. They did not rush. They knew the human would bleed out sooner or later. Marcus ducked behind a collapsed wall, breathing hard. His vision blurred for a moment, but he blinked the haze away. "Stay awake," he whispered to himself. "Stay alive." He checked his rifle. 3 shots left. It would not be enough, but it made him feel better to hold it. Humans fought best when they had something in their hands. Then came the sound. A low hum, deeper than thunder, rolling across the ruins. Marcus turned his head and saw it. A Kithari transport, its black metal surface glowing faintly with alien energy, descended through the smoke. Its landing claws crushed the ground as it touched down, sending tremors through the earth. The ship's door opened and armored figures stepped out, tall, slender, their armor smooth and curved, their faces hidden behind masks of silver and glass. But this was no ordinary patrol. At the center of the group walked a figure taller than the rest, draped in dark robes that shimmered like oil. Her movements were elegant, her presence heavy. Even without knowing their ranks, Marcus could tell. This was someone important. The Kithari soldiers bowed their heads as she passed. The alien queen. Marcus had heard whispers from other soldiers, rumors about the Kithari leader, a queen who ruled with absolute power, whose word could destroy entire worlds. Many doubted she even existed. But here she was, standing in the ruins of a human colony, her eyes glowing faintly through the dark glass of her helmet. Marcus tightened his grip on his rifle. His wound throbbed, but he forced himself to straighten. If this was his end, he would meet it standing. The queen's voice cut through the air, smooth yet sharp. "The last one lives." The soldiers moved forward, spreading out to surround Marcus. He raised his rifle, aiming at the closest one. His finger hovered over the trigger. 3 bullets. 3 chances. He knew it wouldn't matter, but instinct told him to fight. One soldier stepped closer, weapon ready. Marcus fired. The shot rang out, echoing through the broken streets. The bullet struck the alien's armor, piercing it, and the Kithari collapsed with a metallic crash. The others hissed in anger, moving fast, but Marcus fired again. One more alien fell. He tried for a third, but his vision swam, his wound screaming, and the last shot went wide. The rifle clicked empty. Marcus dropped it and raised his fists. Blood ran down his side, soaking into the dust. His breathing was ragged, but his eyes were steady. "Come on," he growled, daring them to attack. But before the soldiers could strike, the queen raised her hand. They froze instantly, waiting for her command. She walked closer, her steps slow and deliberate, studying Marcus as though he were a puzzle she could not solve. He met her gaze through the glass of her helmet. "Go ahead," he spat. "Finish it." The queen tilted her head slightly, her voice calm. "You should already be dead." Marcus smirked despite the pain. "Humans are stubborn. We don't die easy." The queen lowered her hand, signaling her soldiers to stand down. "No, you do not." Marcus swayed on his feet, his strength failing. The world blurred around him. He thought he might collapse, but something in him refused to fall in front of her. He clenched his fists tighter, forcing himself to stay upright. The queen stepped closer, almost within arm's reach. She studied the wound in his side, her glowing eyes narrowing. "A cut like that kills my warriors in minutes. Yet you stand." Her soldiers shifted uneasily as if her words disturbed them. To them, humans were supposed to be weak prey. But this one, he was still alive. Marcus gave a weak grin. "Guess we're harder to kill than you thought." For a long moment, the Queen said nothing. She simply stared, her face unreadable behind the mask. Then, with a gesture, she commanded her soldiers. Two of them stepped forward, grabbing Marcus by the arms. He tried to resist, but his body was too weak now. His knees buckled and they held him up. "Take him," the Queen ordered. Marcus coughed, tasting blood in his mouth. "So what, you're keeping me as a trophy?" The Queen's voice was calm, almost curious. "No, you are not a trophy. You are a question, and I wish to know the answer." Darkness closed in around Marcus as his strength finally gave out. His last thought before he blacked out was simple. If this was death, at least he had faced it standing. When Marcus woke, he was no longer in the ruins. The air was clean. Too clean. He lay on a smooth surface, not stone, not metal, but something in between. Bright lights shone above him and strange humming machines surrounded his bed. His wound was bandaged, though the ache remained. He tried to sit up, but alien restraints held him down. Then he saw her. The Queen stood at the edge of the room, her robes flowing silently around her. Her helmet was gone now, and for the first time Marcus saw her face. Her features were sharp, elegant, almost human, but not quite. Her skin shimmered faintly and her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, deep and unreadable. She spoke, her voice steady. "Human soldier, tell me how you still live." Marcus let out a tired laugh. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Her gaze did not waver. "Try me." Marcus Hale lay on the alien bed, his wrists and ankles bound by glowing restraints. The air around him was sharp and cold, like metal and glass fused into one. Strange machines hummed in the corners, their lights shifting in colors he couldn't name. Every surface in the room was smooth and perfect without bolts or seams, as if the walls themselves had grown into shape instead of being built. He hated it already. The wound in his side throbbed with every breath, though it was wrapped in alien bandages that gave off a faint blue light. He knew he should have been unconscious, maybe even dead. Back home, a cut like that would have taken weeks to heal if it healed at all. But here he was, alive, aching, but not broken, and she was watching him. The Queen stood at the far side of the room. Her long, dark robe seemed to move like water when she walked, and the glow of her eyes followed every motion he made. Without her helmet, she looked less terrifying but far stranger. Her face was smooth, almost human, but her skin shimmered faintly like polished stone. Her hair, long and silver, fell behind her shoulders like liquid metal. For a moment, Marcus thought she looked curious. "Not cruel, not angry. Just curious. You should not be awake," she said at last. Her voice was calm, almost soft, but it carried weight, the kind of voice that could silence a room. "The medicine of my healers has not yet finished its work." Marcus shifted against the restraints, testing them. They didn't budge. "I've had worse mornings," he muttered. A faint flicker of amusement crossed her eyes. Or maybe it was just the light. "Your body should not endure what it has. Even my strongest warriors fall when cut so deep." "Maybe your warriors aren't trying hard enough," Marcus said with a tired grin. "Humans, we don't give up that easy." The Queen tilted her head, studying him like a scientist with a strange specimen.
"Pain does not stop you?"
"Oh, it stops us," Marcus admitted. "But it doesn't decide for us. We keep moving. We fight through it." He gave a small shrug, wincing at the pain it caused. "That's just what we do." The Queen did not respond right away. Instead, she turned to one of the machines. At her gesture, a panel slid open, revealing a series of floating symbols. Her long fingers traced through the air and the symbols shifted. The restraints on Marcus glowed brighter. "You will not be harmed," she said. "But you will be studied." Marcus let out a dry laugh. "Studied? Great. Guess that makes me your science project." She did not answer, but her glowing eyes never left him. Hours passed. Or maybe days, Marcus couldn't tell. The chamber had no windows and the lights never changed. He was given food, strange but edible, and water that tasted like ice. Each time he woke from a restless sleep, the Queen was there watching. Sometimes she brought others with her. Alien healers in pale armor would check his wound, scan his body with devices that hummed and whisper in their strange musical language. Every time they finished, they shook their heads, confused. One day, after another long round of tests, Marcus grew tired of the silence. "You know," he said, "back home people tell stories about aliens. Sometimes they say you'd be gods. Other times they say you'd crush us like bugs. But I don't think anyone imagined this. An alien queen staring at a half-dead soldier like he's the most interesting thing in the galaxy. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. You are interesting. You bleed. You suffer. Yet you endure. My kind is not like this. We are strong, yes, but when our strength fails, we fall. You refuse to fall. Marcus gave a weak chuckle. Guess stubbornness is our superpower. That time, he was sure he saw something in her expression. A hint of a smile. Faint but real. The next day she tested him without warning. The restraints on his wrists and ankles dissolved into mist. Marcus sat up, surprised. His body was weak, his wound still raw, but he swung his legs off the bed. The Queen gestured to a section of the wall. It slid open, revealing a chamber beyond. An empty room with smooth floors and tall ceilings. In the center stood a single object. A long, heavy staff made of black metal with glowing lines running down its shaft. Take it, the Queen ordered. Marcus frowned. Why? Because you can, she said simply. He hesitated. Then with effort he stood. Pain shot through his side, but he gritted his teeth and walked into the chamber. His legs felt heavy, each step a struggle, but he refused to show weakness. When he reached the staff, he gripped it with both hands and lifted. It was heavier than it looked, almost too heavy for his wounded body. His muscles burned, his side screamed in pain, but he did not let go. The Queen stepped closer, her eyes never leaving him. Why do you continue? You could rest. You could fall. Marcus planted the staff on the floor, leaning on it but still standing tall. Because if I stop, I lose. And humans don't like losing. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to her healers. Record this, she commanded. From that day, Marcus was no longer just a prisoner. He was a test. The Queen placed him in different trials, simple at first, then harder. Walking across long chambers while still bleeding. Carrying weights that strained his arms. Standing upright for hours while pain ate at him. Each time the Queen watched. Each time Marcus pushed himself further than her warriors thought possible. He stumbled, he bled, he nearly collapsed, but he never quit. And slowly, the Queen's curiosity grew into something more dangerous. Respect. One night, when the chamber was silent and only the hum of machines filled the air, Marcus spoke. Why are you doing this? You've already won. Your people beat us. Why bother with one broken soldier? The Queen's glowing eyes softened just slightly. Because you are not broken. You should be dead, but you are not. You stand against what should kill you. That is rare, even among my kind. Marcus gave a tired smile. Maybe it's not rare. Maybe you just haven't met enough of us. Her gaze lingered on him, quiet, thoughtful. Perhaps, she said. The chamber doors opened with a deep hiss and Marcus Hale stepped inside, his side still aching from the wound that refused to fully heal. For days now, the alien Queen had studied him, questioned him, and tested his strength in controlled trials. But today felt different. The air itself seemed heavier, as though the walls were waiting for something. The Queen stood above the chamber, high on a balcony of dark stone and light. She was surrounded by her guards and healers, her silver hair glowing faintly under the strange lights. Her gaze never wavered from him. Human, she said, her voice echoing across the walls. You claim pain does not decide your fate. You claim endurance is your weapon. Today you will prove it. Marcus flexed his fists. His body still ached, but his eyes burned with the same stubborn fire. What kind of game is this? Not a game, she said calmly. A truth. Endure and you live. Fail and you die. At her gesture, the walls of the chamber shifted. Panels slid open, revealing rough terrain, pits of fire, jagged stone, and pools of thick liquid that hissed like acid. The air filled with heat and smoke, making Marcus cough, a survival trial. Marcus gave a dry laugh. Of course. You aliens don't make things easy, do you? The Queen leaned forward slightly, her eyes glowing. Show me what makes your kind human. The trial began with the floor itself moving beneath him. The smooth stone tilted and cracked, becoming sharp ridges. Marcus steadied himself, his side burning with pain, but he kept his feet under him. The staff he had been given earlier appeared again, rising from the ground before him. He grabbed it, leaning on it for balance. The first obstacle came fast. The floor split open, revealing a wide gap of fire below. Heat scorched his skin, sweat running down his face. Marcus gritted his teeth, tightened his grip on the staff, and leaped. Pain screamed through his wound, but his boots landed on the other side. He stumbled, nearly fell, but forced himself upright. He looked up at the Queen. She was watching silently, her face calm but her eyes sharp, as if she was measuring every breath he took. The next section was worse. Jagged stones jutted out like knives, and the only path forward was to climb. Marcus placed one hand on the stone, then another, ignoring the sting of cuts on his palms. His muscles trembled. His wound tore slightly. But he climbed higher, every inch fueled by stubborn will. By the time he pulled himself over the top, his arm shook with exhaustion, and his side was wet with fresh blood. He pressed his hand against it, breathing hard, but he didn't stop. He looked up at the Queen again, and with a grin he shouted, "Still alive!" A murmur ran through her guards. They did not understand how a wounded human could keep moving. The Queen raised her hand for silence. Her glowing eyes never left Marcus. The next obstacle was the worst yet. The chamber walls shifted again, and from hidden doors came creatures, alien beasts with long limbs and jaws lined with sharp teeth. Their eyes glowed faintly and they moved with predator grace. Marcus tightened his grip on the staff. His body was tired, broken, but his spirit sharpened like steel. The first beast lunged. Marcus swung the staff, catching it across the jaw. The impact rattled his bones, but the creature crashed to the ground, hissing in pain. Another came from behind, slashing with claws. Marcus turned too slow, the claws grazing his back, but he spun and drove the staff into its chest, knocking it back. Each strike sent fire through his wound. Each movement drained his strength. But he kept going. At last, 3 beasts lay unmoving, and Marcus stood above them, his chest heaving. Blood dripped down his side, his vision blurred, but he was still standing. He slammed the staff to the ground and shouted, "Is that all you've got?" For the first time, the Queen's lips curved in the faintest smile. The trial was not finished. Marcus dragged himself forward, his legs heavy. The last path led to a pool of thick liquid, bubbling and hissing. There was no bridge, no way around, only a series of narrow pillars rising from the pool like stepping stones. He stared at them, then at the Queen. "You want me to jump across that?" Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "Endure and you live." Marcus shook his head, chuckling despite himself. "You're insane." Still, he stepped forward. The first pillar wobbled under his weight, but he kept his balance. The second nearly slipped from under his boot, but he steadied himself with the staff. Each jump tore at his wound, sending waves of pain through his body, but he refused to stop. Halfway across, his vision dimmed, and for a moment he thought he would fall, but he clenched his jaw, forced his legs to move, and leaped again. When he reached the last pillar, he almost collapsed. His arms shook, his knees buckled, but he planted the staff into the stone and pushed forward, landing on the other side. He stood barely, swaying like a man ready to fall. But he was alive, and then with a grin that was half pain and half triumph, Marcus raised the staff high. The chamber fell silent. The Queen stepped down from her balcony, her robes trailing behind her like a river of shadow. She walked toward him slowly, her guards parting in silence. When she reached him, she stopped just a step away, her glowing eyes locked on his. "You should be dead," she said softly, "but you are not. You endure beyond reason, beyond sense. Even my strongest would have fallen." Marcus leaned on the staff, blood dripping down his side. "Guess I'm just built different." Her eyes narrowed, but there was no anger in them, only respect. Perhaps humanity is built different. The guards shifted uneasily. For them, respect from their Queen was rare. To show it to a human was unthinkable. But the Queen ignored them. She turned to Marcus, her voice steady. "You have proven your words. Pain does not decide your fate. Endurance is your weapon. I see now why your kind is dangerous." Marcus smirked through the pain. "Not dangerous, just human." For the first time, the Queen gave a small nod. "Yes, human." The chamber was quiet, though it felt heavier than usual. Marcus Hale sat on a low bench, his staff leaning against his shoulder. His wound, though still painful, had begun to close under the alien bandages, but every movement reminded him that he was still far from fully healed. The Queen stood across the room, watching him. She no longer carried the cold, commanding presence that had first overwhelmed him. Instead, she appeared thoughtful, almost hesitant. "You are awake," she said, her voice calm but carrying weight. "Good. I wish to observe you further." Marcus let out a dry laugh, rubbing his side. "I don't suppose this is just a friendly chat, is it?" She tilted her head slightly. "No, it is not friendly, it is observation." Marcus squinted at her. Observation. That was the word she used, but the truth was different. He could feel it in her eyes. The curiosity, the fascination, the slow-growing respect that was dangerous in its own way. Respect could change alliances, even wars. Why me? Marcus asked suddenly. Why not any other human? You have killed thousands. You could have ended all of us, but instead I'm here. The Queen's gaze held his. You are exceptional. Not because you are stronger than others.
You are not.
But because of your will. You endure when death should have taken you. You continue when others would fall. Marcus leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. So I'm your favorite? He said with a weak smile. The Queen's eyes flickered. You misunderstand. You are not a pet. You are a question, one I wish to answer. Marcus opened his eyes slowly. A question, huh? What kind of question? She did not answer immediately. Instead, she walked closer, her robes flowing silently around her. Humans are different, fragile yet dangerous. You survive not because of strength, but because of your spirit. That is rare, Marcus chuckled softly. Spirit, huh? I just hate dying. The Queen's eyes glowed faintly. It is more than that. You do not give up. You fight when the odds are against you. You endure not because you must, but because you choose to. That is why you are alive when others would be gone. Marcus sat in silence, thinking about her words. He had never expected admiration from an alien queen. Not after all the battles, not after the blood, the pain, the loss. And yet here it was. You think too much for a human, Marcus said lightly, though his voice held no humor. And yet you endure, she replied. Days passed in this uneasy routine. The Queen continued her trials, but they were less violent now. She wanted to see how far his mind and spirit could go, not just his body. Marcus found himself performing tasks that tested patience, focus, and decision-making. One morning, she presented him with a puzzle, a series of interconnected energy fields, shifting and changing, that he had to navigate without touching the barriers. Each wrong step sent a shock through the floor. Marcus studied the fields carefully. His body ached, his wound protested with every movement, but he focused. Step by step he moved forward, watching the fields change and adjusting his path. The Queen watched silently, her eyes following every move. When Marcus finally reached the other side, she inclined her head. You adapt quickly, she said. That is unusual. Marcus gave a tired grin. When your life depends on it, you learn fast. The Queen's lips curved faintly. She did not smile as a human would, but there was something there, a recognition. She had seen many species fall, bend, and surrender, but Marcus never did. He survived not because of raw power, but because of his mind and spirit. The next trial tested his trust. The Queen led Marcus to a high platform overlooking a deep, empty chasm. Between them lay a narrow bridge suspended over the void, swaying slightly. The wind howled through the chamber, cold and biting. You must cross, the Queen said, without touching the sides, without hesitation. Your life depends on it. Marcus studied the bridge. It was narrow, unstable, and the height alone made his stomach turn. His body was weak, and one wrong move could send him plummeting into the unknown below. He took a deep breath. Fine, he muttered. Here goes nothing. Step by step, he moved forward. His legs shook, his side screamed with pain, but he forced himself to keep going. Every fiber of his being wanted to give up, to fall to the ground and accept defeat. But he did not. Halfway across, a gust of wind hit him. The bridge swayed dangerously. Marcus froze for a heartbeat, then pressed forward, keeping his balance. The Queen watched, her glowing eyes fixed on him. For the first time, Marcus noticed the faintest change in her expression, a flicker of approval, a hint of admiration. He reached the other side and fell to his knees, gasping for breath. His body ached, but his spirit burned bright. You trust yourself, the Queen said quietly. That is commendable. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow. You try crossing that yourself, he said, half smiling. I doubt you'd last 5 steps. She did not answer, but he saw her pause. The first time Marcus realized she was thinking, considering, learning from him. Over the following weeks, Marcus continued his trials. They were less about survival and more about understanding. The Queen wanted to see what made humans tick. And Marcus, despite his pain and exhaustion, began to understand her as well. He saw the burden she carried, the weight of ruling an entire species, the responsibility for countless lives, the loneliness that came with power. In her moments of silence when she thought he was not looking, Marcus saw a flicker of doubt, of curiosity, of something almost human. One night, he spoke. You ever get tired of it? Being in charge of everything? The Queen regarded him in silence. Finally, she said, leadership is not simple. It is a constant weight. Decisions must be made. Lives are lost. Strength alone does not guide me. Understanding does. Marcus nodded slowly. Sounds a lot like being a soldier. You follow orders, you keep people alive, but you can't save everyone. Doesn't make it easy. Her eyes softened. Perhaps that is why I watch you so closely. You endure. You survive, and yet you do not lead armies. You do not command worlds. You act without weight. But your will is unbroken. Marcus smiled faintly, the first genuine smile he had allowed himself since the battle. I guess humans are good at surviving. We fight, we adapt, we endure. That's all we really know. And yet, she said, her voice almost gentle, you endure more than most of my kind ever could. That is why I watch you, why I respect you. It was a dangerous thought, this respect. Among her kind, admiration for a human was almost unthinkable. Some of her advisors whispered warnings, questioning her decisions, but the Queen ignored them. Marcus had shown her a truth that could not be denied. Humans were fragile, yet unbreakable in ways that defied logic. She began to see that perhaps humanity's strength was not in weapons, not in numbers, but in spirit. And Marcus, wounded and stubborn, had proven it. For Marcus, the change was subtle but noticeable. The Queen no longer seemed like an untouchable ruler, a distant force of fear. She was a being who could be understood, who could be challenged, and who could, in her own way, respect him. And in that quiet understanding, a fragile bond began to form. One born not of friendship but of recognition, of shared endurance, and of mutual respect between enemies. Marcus knew the war was far from over. But for the first time, he felt something he had not expected in the ruins of his homeworld. Hope. He met the Queen's glowing eyes and, with a small grin, whispered, I guess respect is dangerous, huh? She said nothing, but the faintest flicker of a smile crossed her face. Dangerous indeed. The war drums of the Cathari fleet echoed even through the walls of the Queen's palace. Marcus Hale could feel it in his bones, the pulse of thousands of ships poised to finish what they had started. The colony world had already fallen once, and the humans who had survived were scattered, hiding in the shadows of ruined cities. But Marcus was no longer the broken soldier they had captured. He had endured trials that would have killed any ordinary human. His spirit was unbroken, his resolve sharpened like a blade, and now the Queen herself had invited him to stand at her side, not as a prisoner, but as proof. The Queen's chamber was vast, its walls rising high into the alien sky, glowing softly with strange lights. Her soldiers lined the perimeter, standing tall and silent, and at the center of the room Marcus stood upright, his wound mostly healed, the faint scar across his side a reminder of everything he had survived. You understand why you are here, the Queen said. Her voice carried across the chamber, calm but firm. You will demonstrate to my generals and to me what it means to endure, what it means to be human. Marcus nodded, gripping his staff tightly. His fingers ached, but his spirit was steady. I understand, he said. The Queen's generals stepped forward, their faces hidden behind polished helmets. They had watched Marcus from the start, skeptical of his survival, suspicious of his resilience. To them, humans were fragile, weak, and meant to be conquered. Stand before me, the lead general commanded, his voice harsh. Show the reason your kind should exist. Marcus shifted, feeling the familiar burn of his old wound. Blood had already formed a faint streak across his side, though it was only from the strain he had put on his body. He took a deep breath, then did something that shocked the entire assembly. He tore open his uniform slightly at the wound, exposing the scar and the raw flesh beneath. The chamber fell silent. I am wounded, Marcus said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. And yet I am alive. I stand before you, though my body should have failed. You see strength in weapons, in armor, in numbers, but humanity survives through will, through courage, and through endurance.
Pain does not decide our fate.
Only we do, the generals shifted uneasily. Some murmured to one another. This display was not weakness, nor was it easy. Marcus's exposed wound was proof, not of vulnerability, but of survival. He was alive despite the odds, despite every expectation. The Queen's eyes glowed brighter, and she stepped forward, her presence commanding silence. "You have seen his trials," she said, "and yet many of you doubt. Look again. This human, broken by war, wounded by battle, stands undefeated. That is humanity." Marcus straightened his posture, his shoulders back despite the pain. He met the eyes of the Queen's generals one by one. "You want to conquer us? You want to crush us? Then know this. Humans endure. We rise when everything tells us to fall. We fight when nothing is left. And we survive, not because we are perfect, but because we refuse to quit." He lowered his hands, letting the weight of his words sink into the chamber. Every soldier, every general, every healer watched in stunned silence. The Queen's voice cut through the stillness, soft but unyielding. "Enough. You have proven your point." Marcus blinked, expecting some test, some final trial. But none came. Instead, she turned to her generals. "Retreat," she commanded. "All ships stand down. This colony will not fall. Humanity is not to be destroyed. You will watch, study, and respect what you cannot conquer." A murmur of confusion spread among the generals. They had never been denied victory before. Never faced a leader who chose caution over conquest. But the Queen's word was absolute. Marcus lowered his arms, exhausted but victorious. His wound throbbed painfully, but it was a small price for what he had achieved. You are alive because of your will," the Queen said quietly, stepping closer to him. "Because of your spirit. I have underestimated humanity. I will not make that mistake again." Marcus gave a weak smile. "Guess stubbornness pays off." Her gaze softened almost imperceptibly. "It is more than stubbornness. It is courage, endurance, something rare among the stars." He nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words. "We survive. That's all we know. And maybe that's enough to change the universe." Outside the palace, the fleet withdrew and the colony breathed once more. Humans who had hidden in ruins began to emerge, witnessing the strange truce that had saved them. Across both species, the story spread. The lone human who had faced impossible odds, wounded and exhausted, and had refused to die. In the days that followed, Marcus was allowed to move freely within the Queen's domain. He observed the alien society closely, learning and teaching in return. The Queen often watched him from a distance, curious, respectful, and perhaps even a little proud. For the first time, Marcus understood what it meant to survive not just for oneself, but as proof of something greater. Humanity had shown its strength, not through weapons or numbers, but through the unbreakable spirit that even an alien queen could not ignore. And in that moment, a fragile hope grew between their species. A hope that one day, humans and the Cathari could be more than enemies, that they might find understanding or even alliance in a universe that had once seemed so cruel. Weeks later, the Queen summoned Marcus to the highest balcony of her palace. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and below, human and Cathari alike moved in strange harmony, sharing resources, rebuilding what war had destroyed. "You have changed my view," she said, her glowing eyes reflecting the stars. "Humans are extraordinary, not because of what you wield, but because of what you endure. You have shown me a strength I did not understand." Marcus leaned on his staff, smiling faintly. "Glad I could help. Don't make it a habit, though. I'm not exactly a quiet hero type." She allowed a faint smile in return. "No, but perhaps that is your gift. Humanity's gift. The will to survive. The courage to stand when all else falls." Marcus glanced at the scar on his side, then at the horizon where the first human colony ships were leaving, carrying survivors to safety. "We'll survive," he said softly. "No matter what. And maybe, one day you'll see that we're worth more than a fight." The Queen nodded. "I see it now, and I will remember it." The universe, vast and endless, had changed. One human, wounded, stubborn, and unyielding, had proven a truth that could not be ignored. Humans were fragile yet unbreakable, ordinary yet extraordinary.